During World War II, the concentration camps established by the Nazis within Germany and German-occupied lands saw untold horrors and crimes. The largest concentration camp established was Auschwitz, and it's estimated that within the camp over 1 million people were murdered, being forced into gas chambers by guards. The stories of violence and barbarism at the camps haunted people after the end of the Second World War, and a number of guards were brought to trial for their crimes against humanity. What shocked many people around the world was that many young women were involved in the sadistic crimes. One woman brought to trial after the end of the war was Elisabeth Volkenrath, a guard in her 20s who rose up rather high within the concentration camp system. She was known for murder, violence, and selecting prisoners to go to their deaths. She was later executed after the end of the war, and was 26 when she was killed for her crimes. But what is the story of her? Join us today as we look at the disgusting crimes of Elisabeth Volkenrath, and remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Elisabeth Volkenrath worked before joining the SS as a hairdresser, but she became inspired with the Nazi Party politics and policies, and because of this she signed up to the SS retinue at the beginning of October 1941. She was sent to Ravensbruck concentration camp, an all-female camp, where many of the worst female camp guards were taught by other sadistic guards. Volkenrath studied there and worked under Dorothea Binz, a violent guard herself. She trained to become an Aufseherinnen and was in charge of making sure that prisoners did not escape. But Volkenrath dreamed of working in a larger camp, and in March 1942 she applied for a transfer to Auschwitz. Around this time, the persecution against the Jews was heightened, and mass deportations took place, and with this more workers were needed at Auschwitz, which would become the deadliest site of the Holocaust, with over 1 million people being murdered there. Volkenrath became a guard at the camp inside of the prisoners' tailor shop, and within a few months worked in the women's camp at Auschwitz II Birkenau. Birkenau became the main extermination and killing part of the camp, and it was within here that she worked. Despite getting typhus, she was then transferred into the parcel post office at Birkenau, where she monitored 30 prisoners and would inspect packages coming into the camp. She was given a huge number of other duties, including handing out bread, but she stayed at Auschwitz until she was later transferred out. In terms of her crimes, Volkenrath was accused of a large number of terrible and violent actions. She was accused of taking part in the selections. As prisoners arrived at Auschwitz, Volkenrath would walk through the new arrivals, and those who were deemed not fit enough to work were sent to their deaths immediately at the gas chambers. She would choose many inmates to be killed, and was even accused of helping to load prisoners onto lorries and transports, which would then take the prisoners to the gas chambers. She would drive prisoners onto them, and she claimed she did not know where the lorries were going, but she knew exactly what she was doing. She ended up becoming the superintendent of the women's camp, and stayed in that role until Auschwitz was evacuated. There were many more reports of Volkenrath's sadistic side, and it was said that she beat many prisoners brutally. She admitted that she did slap a number of women in the face while she worked as a guard, but one woman, Vera Fischer, testified at her trial that she was beaten so badly by Volkenrath that she was forced to stay in hospital for 3 weeks. On around 80 occasions, she was seen beating women prisoners, sometimes to death, with her truncheon, and many of these women were knocked unconscious. Another woman, Helene Herkovitz, claimed at Volkenrath's trial that she was questioned about a locket and a ring that she was wearing, and that she was sent to Volkenrath. Here she was beaten with the rubber truncheon, was then placed in a cellar, and was given bread and water every 3 days, being punished. She was then forced to work in the toilets, and whilst here she caught typhus and then almost died. More stories of Volkenrath's brutality emerged, and she was shockingly accused of throwing an old woman down a flight of stairs near to a workshop. It was said this woman died immediately. She was known for taking food and water from prisoners, leaving them with nothing to survive and live on. She also forced prisoners to make sport, which was where she forced them to exercise constantly, in a form of punishment that was so severe that many of the prisoners died from exhaustion. She claimed at her trial that she saw slapping women in the face as necessary at some times, and that she had not been involved in the selections. She claimed she did not know the doctors were selecting people to go to their deaths during the process, but evidence against this was put forward. It was said that at many times she sent people to the gas chambers. Volkenrath was accused of striking a woman so hard that she was out cold, and that one girl who was sick was caught stealing vegetables. Volkenrath then forced her to kneel down and hold the stolen goods above her head for 4 hours, until she could not hold her arms up any longer. Then she beat her so badly with her rubber truncheon she was knocked out, and she instructed that no one was to help the girl until night set in. She was transferred to Bergen-Belsen after Auschwitz was closed, and she remained as a supervising wardress there until she was arrested by the British liberators at Belsen. She was for her crime sentenced to death at the Belsen Trials, and was then executed by hanging at Hamelin Prison, with Albert Pierpoint being the executioner. At the age of 26, Elisabeth Volkenrath was sentenced to death and killed. But what is disturbing is the fact that many of her crimes were committed when she was younger, at around the age of 22, when she first worked in a concentration camp. She was a violent and brutal woman who gained a sadistic reputation for beating prisoners, often to death. She seemed like a woman who wished to wield horrific power over innocent and vulnerable people. The crimes of Elisabeth Volkenrath were many, and today a number of them remain untold. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.